Okay, ESPN ranked some of the top quarterbacks of the 2000s, and there are a lot of very good quarterbacks on their list. But I want to focus on what they did with, the Georgia quarterbacks, very specifically Stetson Bennett and, all the guys, the quarterback rankings in the 2000s. When you think about it, y'all, there have been some really good quarterbacks through the years and the decades. I mean, you talk about Tebow, RG3, Vince Young was in the 2000s. I know that's what year were you born? You were born during Vince Young, but I'm talking to you. Yeah.
Oh one.
Okay, so you were there. They've got Stetson at number 37 overall. That's several spots in front of Aaron Murray, who I think Aaron would agree with that. But there's a couple of guys I want to talk about first. And these guys were ranked in front of Stetson Bennett as college quarterbacks. Now I don't totally know the criteria necessarily on this. Chase Daniel, who is at Missouri, had 12,500 passing yards, 101 touchdowns, and 41 interceptions. Rex Grossman, old Florida quarterback, who I remember as being more up and down sort of than anything. He had 9,000 yards, 77 touchdowns, 36 interceptions. And then Colt McCoy, Dylan's guy, they had Colt McCoy at number 12, right behind Trevor Lawrence. 13,000 passing yards, Matt, 112 touchdowns, 45 interceptions. I do want to say, with the possible exception of Rex Grossman, that those two guys in the Big 12 played a different style of offense than Georgia has in this time. Reminder of Stetson Bennett, 8,400 yards, 66 touchdowns, and 21 interceptions. Do the national championships matter? Is this only ring counting or is it yard counting? What do you think, Matt?
It's got to be both. And if we're talking about greatest quarterbacks of all time, everything comes into play. This century.
Right.
Okay, so everything still comes into play, though. Now, Aaron didn't have the championships, but is he still the SEC leader all time in yards and touchdowns?
In passing.
That says a lot. And Stetson has 2 championships, was a multi-year starter, didn't lose a game at home. I mean, all these little things matter. And I get why Colt McCoy is there. He was very, very good. I get why Rex Grossman is there. But if it were up to me, and I don't want to sound like this because I cover this team, but I would probably have Aaron a little higher up, and I'd have Stetson a little higher up. I don't have the rankings or whatever in front of me right now. I see them come across my screen here, so I'll take a look at that. But I think they both, without looking at the list right now, they should probably be ranked a little higher because what they did was special in both ways.
There were some really good quarterbacks in the 2000s. I'm going to tell you that right now. Make sure you're picking up the 2023 preview. You get Double Dogs. If you get Double Dogs, the 23 previews included. A lot of people are just getting the preview, which is great. You can pick that up down below. Ryan and I got the memo about Red Zone T-shirts. So, yeah, I mean, thanks a lot, Matt. You can pick it up.
I don't even have one yet. I need to pick one up at Red Zone, though. I need to pick one up at Red Zone.
Hey, they've got Baker at number 1. We can talk about the top 10, but the number 1 player is Baker Mayfield, and I don't know. Oh boy. I see you doing that. Let's let Ryan talk, though. Go ahead, Ryan, because you've looked confused.
I've been reading this the whole time.
Okay. Do you have
I can't figure out what this criteria is because
right.
I'm not saying it doesn't make sense, but it does seem a little bit ambiguous as to how they ranked him. They got Justin at 29, Justin Fields. Like, I just don't understand what this is based off of because it's kind of all like... I think Justin Fields was an eye test one that they threw at 29.
Well, the problem for Justin is he only really played a season and a half. I mean, that's one issue. They got Ben Roethlisberger in front of Justin Fields. I don't see how you can. And Pat White, who is really, really good at West Virginia. But look, here's their top 5 are really good quarterbacks. They got Joe Burrow at number 5, Tim Tebow at number 4, Vince Young at number 3, Cam Newton at number 2. And Baker Mayfield at number 1. I'm going to just add this real quick. Urban Meyer had 3 of those 4 guys, and 2 of them didn't finish their careers with him, which is interesting. Personally, I think the best quarterback of the 2000s so far has been Joe Burrow. Okay, the problem with that is he really had one exceptional season, whereas like Tim Tebow had 2 really good seasons and 1 okay season. They got Cam Newton had 1 explosive, unbelievably difficult season. It was amazing at Auburn. But Baker, probably in terms of longevity, Ryan, was, almost 15,000 yards, 131 touchdowns, and 1 tough loss to the Dogs in overtime.
Yeah, it doesn't mention the national championships when they talk about Stetson on here, but they mention it for some other players. Yeah, I don't know, man. Putting Baker at 1, I think I saw like a graphic about that the other day, and I was like, I just
see what happens though too, y'all, is that these guys go on into the league and their performance in the league prejudices us after the fact. That's part of why. Baker Mayfield was an unbelievable college quarterback. So was Vince Young. Tim Tebow was a good college quarterback. He really was very, very good. He couldn't hold Joe Burrow's jock. He just
but put yourself in the perspective of us not thinking about their NFL careers at all. Back in college, like towards the end of Baker's career in college, were you like, wow?
Oh no, he was really good.
I know, but like this guy's been the best quarterback in college football in the last 20 years.
No, people would argue. At that time, people would say it would have been Tim Tebow. Go ahead, Matt. Jump in.
He kind of fell apart in the fourth quarter in overtime against Georgia. But, Kyler Murray had just as good a year after that. Maybe not statistically. He led them to the same, part of the season, college football semifinal. Yeah. But where's Johnny Football here? I would have put Johnny Manziel above Baker Mayfield. I just thought he was really, really good. I love Johnny Football. But I don't know. Baker Mayfield at number 1 is kind of ridiculous to me. I know the numbers are great, and he was very good. He's got the Heisman, but
RG3 in front of Trevor. Comment.
Trevor's got championships.
Yeah, it's Trevor's
plural. Did they win 2?
Yep. 2.
So I guess they
just won 1.
Okay, just 1 as a freshman. Okay. He's got a championship. RG3 was great, and he had he was very flashy. He was easy to root for, and it was fun to watch. Johnny Football was more fun to watch than Baker Mayfield, but I don't know. Baker rubbed me the wrong way. I understand why he's towards the top. He's not number 1 for me. I think that's crazy. I'd put Tim Tebow ahead. He accomplished more than Baker Mayfield.
What about? But let's not. Matt Leinart is not in your top 10. I'm trying to understand. Listen, man, I don't know if people understand. I want to make sure I'm really clear on this. Those SC teams were unbelievable in the mid-2000s, and Matt Leinart was a really good quarterback. Now, he's left-handed, so that whole thing was a little bit weird. But, he was really, really good. And to have him behind Jameis Winston, Sam Bradford, and Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore played in the kiddie pool. He just did. Now they whipped Georgia's ass that one game, but that was not a that I would not know.
Did David Green and his 42 wins make the list?
David did make the list. Shock's not on here. David was at number 69 behind Andy Dalton. Nice. Behind Andy Dalton, behind Kevin Kolb, who I do not remember. I'm sorry.
At Houston?
Yeah, Houston.
Where's Colt Brennan?
Colt Brennan is on here, is he not? Yeah. Is he not on here, y'all?
I can't do 2 things at once. If I'm focused on talking, I can't look at the
42.
list.
He's just in front of Aaron Murray. I don't know about that one, but let me focus back on this thing. Stetson at 37, just in front of Mac Jones, who was a really good one-year player. Okay? Really good one-year player. And behind Ken Dorsey, who also won a national championship, I believe, in 2001. He had those were really good Miami teams. But I got to say, Troy Smith, he won the Heisman. I voted for him, I believe, number 1 to win the Heisman. I would take Stetson Bennett over him. Jason White, who was really good at Oklahoma and won the national championship. While he was there, he didn't. I don't think he was a starter that year. I would take Stetson over him. Colin Kaepernick, people don't remember him at Nevada. He was a really good player. Kiddie Pool, Rex Grossman. I mean, okay,
Was he better than Danny Werfel?
No. Rex Grossman?
Yeah.
No,
right?
I think Danny Werfel was one of the great quarterbacks of modern SEC history. The problem, this gets back to the discussion though, y'all. When we're going to start talking about Danny Werfel and Eric Zier. This gets back to the Herschel Walker Todd Gurley thing for me. That even in the early 90s, the SEC was not like it is today. And you can't, it's hard to compare Stetson Bennett to like Danny Werfel. Danny Werfel would be a really good quarterback in today's SEC. But if you don't have some aspect of the threat of run, some aspect of it, it becomes more challenging. There's only so many Mac Jones that are kind of hanging out there.
Yeah, I think Tua was really good. Bryce Young was really good, and they could both move a little bit. Bryce Young didn't really have to move as much.
No.
But it's interesting to see how they rank these guys, because I do think championships mean a lot, and I know the numbers win a lot, and I know winning means a lot. There's so many different factors. Cam Newton's one season and Joe Burrow's 2019 season are the two greatest seasons for any quarterback I've ever seen. And I guess Baker's multiple years, I guess he started 2 years, was really good both. Gives him the nod over them.
I think he
started. I have a little bit of a problem with
He
that.
might have started 3, but he got hurt or something. I can't quite remember the Baker. Let me ask. I have 2 questions for y'all. First of all, would you rather have Stetson Bennett, or in college now? We're talking about in college. Would you rather have Stetson Bennett, or would you rather have Justin Fields? That's number 1. Number 2, which of these singular seasons? Well, that's the question. But I do want to say this about Cam and Trevor and Cam and Joe Burrow. Auburn snuck by some games there. Now, Cam basically did it by himself, and Joe Burrow had some killer wide receivers, man. Woo! But Auburn was barely winning those games. There were times they didn't score. I don't know if you remember that. I mean,
the team wasn't that good, man.
No, they weren't.
The team was not that good.
Oh, go ahead, preach. Go for it.
I think Cam would be my 1 and Burrow would be my 2.
Okay.
But I don't really get why Deshaun is 6 and Trevor's 11. They're right next to each other for me. Like, their numbers and what they accomplished there is just so similar. I have
a big Clemson buddy.
Back-to-back national championships, but
my Clemson buddy would say Trevor over Deshaun. Talked about that before.
I would take Deshaun over Trevor at Clemson. I would not take him in the NFL.
I feel like every list that we look at, I end up hating, but
I want to see a Ryan list. Let's get it, a Ryan top 35 quarterbacks.
Top 35.
So that Auburn team, for the record, they beat Mississippi State on the road 17-14. They had to win in overtime against Clemson. That was a fight in 2010. I said it was on the road. It was at Auburn. They beat South Carolina by a touchdown. They beat Kentucky on the last-second field goal on the road. I don't know if anybody remembers that. They beat LSU by 7. They beat Alabama. They came back to win that game by 1, and they kicked a field goal to win the national championship against Oregon. LSU was straight.
They obliterated almost
everybody.
I mean, statistically, we're never going to see a season
offensively.
I don't think we'll see like a season that Joe Burrow had. I don't know if we'll see that again. But he had Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. Those are 2 of like the top 8 receivers in the NFL. So I mean, and the rest of that that team, as far as NFL talent, was stacked too. A lot of those defensive guys are on NFL rosters. A couple of the offensive linemen, the running back has been on the Chiefs for the last couple of years. So they were stacked. I mean, but I think what Cam did, you'd have to put him at 1.
I think that's a legitimate argument. I was there.
Here's the thing too. did anyone not want to watch Cam Newton play football? I mean, there was just nothing.
The
I think
Alabama
over the
fans.
last out of the yeah, Alabama fans, that's it. But over the last 15 years, I mean, is there a player that made your jaw drop more than Cam Newton? I don't know. That for me, no one has in college
Well,
football.
Johnny
Johnny was
Manziel
up there,
was
Lamar was up there
Le-
as far as the jaw drop.
well,
But
but speaking of the national championship at Clemson, if Lamar Jackson gets a first down, or excuse me, it wasn't Lamar, it was the guy he threw it to. If that guy just properly runs where he should have, they win that game. Clemson's got 2 losses, and there is no national championship for them in 2016. And so there's, that didn't happen. It wasn't Lamar Jackson's fault. The guy ran out of bounds short on 4th down. It was in this stunning play. I couldn't believe it when I watched it. But I think I would take Burrow at 1. The amazing thing, y'all, is that we always have talks about Tim Tebow, and he really was an exceptional player. And you'll hear this argument. Usually these folks are Tim Tebow fans more than they are college football fans, but he's the greatest college football player of all time. I don't really see how you can make that argument necessarily anymore. He was a great player. He was a part of a national championship, 2 national championship teams, a starter on one of them. He's a very, very good player, but the quarterback play in college football, Matt, in the last 15 years has gone. I mean, we're seeing 7-on-7 really mattering in football. It makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I mean, Caleb Williams could win another Heisman this year and then be in that conversation. What Mac Jones and those quarterbacks at Alabama have done was tremendous.
Changed.
What Lamar Jackson was able to do. Yeah, they're so talented. That's the word I keep coming back to. Most of these guys can run, but the arm talent is crazy. And a lot of these guys are trained, when they're in 6th grade, have personal quarterback trainers. So they play at great high schools with great coaching. So they get to college prepared more than guys, 10, 15, 20 years ago. And they just roll with it. And they keep improving and keep developing. And they're really, really good quarterbacks. And going back to your other question, I'd probably take a 25-year-old Stetson Bennett over a 19-year-old Justin Fields.
Yeah.
But if they're both 22, I'd probably take Justin Fields.
Well, and that's the other thing. I know it's like sacrilegious for people to acknowledge Justin Fields in Georgia. I mean, everybody's got to get past all that stuff. But Justin is an incredible athlete who is probably still developing at the Bears, and he was not ready to take over the starting position at Georgia. I want to just say this real quick too. When you think about Tim Tebow and the quarterbacks that came before him, Tim Tebow was predicated a lot on the run, the power run. But since that time, since Tim's time at Florida, we've had these type of guys who've really exploded on the scene. Going backwards, Stetson Bennett, Trevor Lawrence, Deshaun Watson, Johnny Manziel, Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield, guys like that. These guys all had the capability to really hurt you with their legs in a way that Tim Tebow, it was different. And so I think, to me, the sport continues to change, and the quarterbacks are just becoming exceptional. All right, I'm going to let Ryan finish it up for us.
Yeah, that's the problem when you're making lists that stretch a long span of time is the sport just changes. It's different than it was 10 years ago. It's not the same. Like watching college offenses in 2010 when Cam was dominating is different than watching a college offense today. So it's hard to kind of account for that when you're making these lists. It's the same with every sport. Like they're just better. The players just get better over time.
No question. There's no question. You would never.
It's clear with basketball. I think that's where it's the clearest to watch. Just like, wow, these guys are so much more talented than they were 20 years ago. And there's like a higher quantity of talented players now than there used to be. And I think it's the same way with quarterbacks, specifically in football, is they've changed, and these Dylan Raiolas are the ones that are going to get recruited.